Chapter 7. Chapter 7. Characters, Strings, and the String Builder, Part 1. Actually, that is the title of this chapter, but we are omitting the String Builder because it's not part of our course objectives for this course. Our objectives for this chapter: identify string data problems, manipulate characters, declare and compare string objects, use other string methods, convert string objects to numbers, but we will be omitting the portion relating to String Builder and String Buffer classes. Understanding string data problems. So manipulating characters and groups of characters provides some challenges for beginning Java programmers. If you've taken an Excel class, it's likely that you've done something very similar. Some very similar functions exist in Excel as we are going to be using here in Java to manipulate and work with strings. String is a class. It's not a primitive type in Java. However, like a primitive type, it's built in. We don't need to include any special libraries. It's built by the nice folks at Sun Microsystems. So it's different from a class that we write, or it's different from a class such as JOption Pane that we have to include. So we can just go ahead and use the string class, and each created string is a class object. So what that means is that the string variable name is actually a reference, and it holds an address of where that actual string resides in memory. Therefore, you cannot compare two strings using the equals equals operator, because what the equals equals operator is comparing is the contents of that variable name. So if you're looking at two integers, the integer is actually stored at the variable represented by that name, and so there's no problem. But if you're looking at reference types, what is stored at that location, and what's stored at that location is a reference, an address, and not the contents of the string itself. So what you're comparing is two memory locations, not what is stored there. So to compare the contents of strings, we have to use a built-in method, which we'll see in a minute. Here's an example of a don't do it. This is where they're trying to compare two strings using the equals equals operator, and it will not work. What that's comparing is, are these two strings aliases of one another, rather than is the same value stored in both strings. So classes to use when working with character data. The character class holds an instance of a single character value. It's much like the integer wrapper class or the double wrapper class. And the character class also has some methods that can act on and manipulate that single character value. A string is more than one character. So a character would be in single quotes and a string would be in double quotes. And a string class is for working with fixed string data. Strings are immutable, and what immutable means is that it can't be changed. So strings can't be changed. We can create a new one, but we can't change an existing string object. I'm going to skip everything related to String Builder and String Buffer because it's not part of the course objectives for this class. So the character class contains standard methods for testing values of characters. These methods begin with the word is. Now an is method is known as a predicate method, and all that means is that it returns a Boolean, it returns a true or a false. So when you see a method that starts with the word is, doesn't mean anything magic to Java, but that's a heads up to the programmer. This method is going to return a Boolean. Methods that begin with the to are going to cause some conversion to take place, such as to uppercase will return a character that has been converted to uppercase. Here's a chart of some commonly used methods in the character class. I encourage you to take a post-it note and mark this page in your book, or just keep this handy somewhere where you can refer to it. I don't recommend memorizing all of the different methods, because from language to language you can pretty much do the same type of thing, but the name of the method or function might be different. So if you just keep track of where you can look this up, that's probably more effective than memorizing any of these method names. Here's an example for manipulating characters from figure 7-3 in your book. And for example, we declare a character variable char, a char. I say char, some people say car, some people say character. Notice how the first line of code inside that main method, it declares char. That's a primitive type, that's a primitive character type. This chapter so far has referred to the character wrapper class, that class that can wrap up a character and include some additional functionality. So for example, we're going to set HR equal to the character that is at the first location of the string a string. So you look at this code and you see that the user has typed in a character, and we use the scanner class just like we did in the last chapter to get that keyboard input, stored it in a string. Now when we say a string dot char at 0, 0 is the first location. You think, no, the first location should be 1, but Java starts counting at 0. So 0 means the first character position of the string a string. So it's going to find out what that first character was and store that in the character variable a char. And then it prints that out again, and then it says character dot is uppercase. So it's asking, is it uppercase? That is uppercase method is a predicate method. It will return a true or false. If it's true, it will say HR is uppercase. If it's not true, it'll say HR is lowercase. And I say HR, but really it's the character that's stored at that location. And then we have an if statement to check if it's lowercase, and so on. I encourage you to take this code and run it in NetBeans so you can see what happens, and make sure that you understand each line of code, be able to trace through this.